Byron?
Yes, thank you, Dennis. Asking better questions. What the heck is he talking about? First of all, yeah, thank you, Dennis and Allie, for the opportunities that you present. This is a wonderful, wonderful, always good stuff, always something to learn. We always end up being better people after any of your offerings, the bench,
Thank you.
these, whatever it is. And I have to add here that my learning curve about this particular topic is kind of like the outside walls of the Luxor, if you've ever seen that hotel in Vegas. Pretty steep. So you'll have to bear with me. Although there are a lot of connections with Jeff's talk, I'm happy to say. Um, anyway, and also one of the things that I get a benefit from Biz Catalyst and all that is we always learn from each other, and that's always a good thing. So let's get into this a little bit. Yeah, asking better questions. Oh, here, by the way, before I forget to do this, which is something I commonly do, I'm going to put my questions. Dennis had a name for these spearhead questions or something. I forget what it was, but I put them
Springboard.
springboard questions. There we go. Thank you. And I'm going to put those right there in the chat if everybody can see that. Okay, anyway, the standard question format everybody has always heard is, the typical who, what, when, where, how, all that. And especially in this society, because we like some instant feedback, the responses to those questions is always, hopefully, is going to be very simple. One word answers, or maybe two or three words at the very most. Who, what, when, where, why, how. And that's pretty straightforward stuff. We've all been taught that that's the way to ask a question. But is it really that simple? Well, I'm going to suggest it's not. So in this session, I propose a different format. I have you three questions in the chat stream there. And some of you may have already received those. I put them on LinkedIn yesterday for some of you. And I'll ask that you inject a new solution into the mix for every one of these questions. And I'm going to kind of guide you through that as we talk. And again, this is a brand new topic for me, but I think it has a lot of potential. And so we're going to talk about how to better answer questions, how to ask better questions. And by the way, some of this, if I'm allowed to plug a book here, and some of you may already know which book I'm going to refer to, a lot of this is taken from a book that has had a major impact on me and Mariah as well. And it's a thing called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And Mr. Singer lives just up the road from us here, not about 2 hours away. And we have had the pleasure of investing quite a bit of time with him and his group here in the last couple of months. And his basic premise, and this is how I'm getting, in a roundabout fashion, this is how I get to the questions. Singer's basic premise is that we aren't bothered at all by the events, by the vicissitudes of daily life. What really bothers us is indulging in the bother it causes us. That is, it's not embracing the events and harms we feel. It's the way our mind looks at those things and how we let those thoughts and all those conflicting back and forth that we do in this voice in our own head, how we let that run and possibly ruin our lives. And that's one of his basic premises. And in other words, what really bothers us is the false belief that we are our thoughts, and which is not true. And I'll get into some of that as well as we go along here. And that goes for positive as well as negative thoughts, of course. So I'm still a student of this at this stage of the discernment process. But if I understand this, we are, and I'll ask, this is the first question, if you notice that, who am I? That's one of the first questions. And we'll we'll do these in order as we go along here. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah, the way we interact with each other. We think we are our consciousness. In other words, we're not our thoughts. We're not what happens to us. We're not that trip to Vegas that we can't get out of our minds. None of that is true. We are our consciousness. We are this consciousness that watches all we do. And this sounds a little woo-woo, a little squishy to some people, but when you think about it, that's really who we are. Okay, so yeah, and we struggle to entertain those thoughts. And if you've ever noticed, here's an example of what we do. And I'll give you a quote here. I can't believe she didn't see me. You're out in public and you see a friend coming down the sidewalk and she just passed you, doesn't even acknowledge you. And what does your thought do right away? I can't believe she didn't see me. She walked right by me. And she ignored me. What's up with that? Did I piss her off or what? And then, isn't it funny how our thoughts go back and forth with each other? We argue with each other. Well, she say, well, she's got a lot on her mind. I should give her a break. Maybe she didn't recognize me. We just met last week. I'm not so good at names either. Okay, anyway, let's open this up and see how those thoughts and the three questions interact. Here are the three questions. I think, yeah, they're still in the chat stream there. Okay, so first question I'm going to ask you, who are you? And I guess we can jump in at any time. I don't really have a preference here, but a lot of people think, well, in my case, I'll say, who am I? I'm Mariah's husband. I am a retired pilot. I'm a guy who lives in Tampa. I'm the second of 10 kids. I mean, all this on this. When it's really not who I am, because I was who I am before I ever met Mariah, for example. I was who I am before I ever got in the cockpit the first time, before I moved to Tampa, and before my other 8 siblings came along. I was that person, that who I am now. And so what I conclude from that is, and I'll be anxious to hear the interaction with this, is who you are and how you answer that question. Who are you? Who are you really at the core of your being? And that's a better question than just how are you? Because, we do all these just kind of inane, because, how you doing? How are you today? What's up? And we don't really want an answer to any of that stuff. It's just it's a one-off question. So anyway, the second question ties in to the first. What can I do about what just happened to me? For example, that good friend you thought passes you on the sidewalk and doesn't acknowledge you. What do you do with that? What reaction do you have to that? How does it, as Michael Singer says, how does that hit your stuff? What does that do inside of you? What do your thoughts start doing there, and why? That's the second question. Okay, and the third question is connected to those two. What part of me is disturbed by what happened to me? What is it? Is it my heart? Is it my brain? Is it any emotion that I can point at and say, what part of me does that affect? And why is that so? So anyway, that's what we're going to do. We're going to ask better questions. Who am I? Who are you? What can I do about what just happened to me? And what part of me is disturbed by all of this? And we'll just get into that and have a little discussion about that. So here's one of the things that I want to add into that mix to think about before you answer those questions. As Singer says, we are on, I can hear him saying it. We are on this little wet ball of mud and water and trees and critters and stuff. And we are floating around in the middle of outer space. And we are 93 million miles away from an entirely mediocre star. And we're complaining about that $28 piece of pizza in Vegas. Are we really? You know, we are one of 7 billion people on this little ball of mud and water that's out in the middle of nowhere. And the guy on the freeway is going 10 miles under the speed limit. And we're complaining about it. Get off the damn freeway. Are we really? Is that really how we want to be spending our time? So, anyway, that's kind of the context of where we're going with this. And, and the other thing that comes into play here is the Viktor Frankl quote. And that's one of my favorite quotes, how there's an impulse and then there's a reaction. And there's a space in between those two. And in that space, we find our freedom. We can either, and that's where the consciousness and the thoughts come in for me, because in that space, we can decide who we are. You know, I've heard somebody say one time, this is cute. Somebody says, you really prove who you are when the vending machine won't deliver your pop. You know, that reveals who you really are. And we've all been in front of that vending machine. So anyway.